Everyone, welcome to another Music Talk Tuesday, and today I thought it would be interesting um, to address some songs that are really my personal favorites of David Bowie. He unfortunately recently passed away, and I thought it would be interesting to briefly touch upon his songs, considering the fact that he has had a significant impact, at least when it comes to the music industry. Um, and Sort of had his own kind of unique persona. Now, I wouldn't say I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as someone who really um, was into his music in depthly. I probably have heard David Bowie on and off, but the songs that I managed to listen to, or um, at least were exposed to over the years, were all fairly unique and interesting, and ones that I enjoyed. And the ones I enjoyed the most, I'm going to be discussing here. So, without further ado, let me address some. Let me address the first one, that being Modern Love. Um, the interesting thing, and this oftentimes can be attributed to a lot of David Bowie songs, is that the message is usually not really clear cut as to what exactly um, is being said, or what kind of ideas are supposed to be getting across to the audience. And I think a lot of David Bowie's style was very interpretive, and I think this sort of displayed a level of artisticness that again makes him a fairly unique artist, to say the least. Um, but it seems to reflect onto a variety of things, um, and it's almost displaying a sort of loss in faith. And this faith is sort of in love itself, modern love, as he terms it. Now, modern love can be a variety of different things, and can be put into a variety of different contexts for different people. But it seems like he's expressing uh, God within this as well. So it may or may not be trying to touch upon faith. It does mention religion within the song as well. So he is kind of uh, addressing those subjects, but in a way that is uh, sort of I guess you could say, uh, more on the sides of pessimistic, at least within the lyrics. He kind of looks upon it as something that he doesn't ultimately really believe in. Um, Whether that be a god or a religion, or or the motion of, I guess, modern love, as he terms it. So again, there is a lot that can be played with as to what exactly he's trying to get across. But I think generally speaking, it's touching upon those kinds of things. And in doing so, it gives off a fairly ironic sort of approach where it's fairly upbeat, and it's a great use of instrumentals, and it does sort of signify the era of the 80s. In particular, David Bowie was really well known for uh, his work within that period, and he sort of kind of reflected onto that period with sort of the style, and he was all about the kind of, you know, that he was part of a lot of that artistic, he was like within that realm of artistry, I guess. And again, he was sort of into fashion as well. So there is a lot of things that sort of encompass the era of the 80s that he kind of sort of embraced. And here you can see that fully on display here. It really does shine through with its genre of pop, and it again it feels like there is a genuine effort put into it, and that there is a certain amount of heart into it as well, because you can sort of really get the sense of how he is kind of frustrated a little bit, and you can sort of tell within the way he expresses his uh, lyric, or the way in which he expresses the vocals um, and lyrics. So, but I think that's really ultimately though all I can say about that song. It's one of his more, I think, famous works, and it really is one that I think a lot of people remember, and one that I really do enjoy. Second song that I wanted to briefly mention is Rebel Rebel. Now, this one has a little bit more of a rock edge to it, unlike a lot of other David Bowie songs that are kind of, more on the stranger side. Um, and again, the ambiguity is obviously there, like a lot of David Bowie songs. Um, but he sort of talks about none other than a rebel, hence the title Rebel Rebel. And he describes how he sort of admires the rebel and takes a liking to the person that is a rebel. Now, as to exactly what a rebel is, it's kind of not clearly defined within the song. There is kind of a, again, like I've said before, ambiguity to what David Bowie was really trying to get at with the song. But the impression that at least I gather from it is, again, trying to embrace that whole um, kind of out there era of the 80s. And if if you ever look at 80s fashion, you'll kind of understand what I mean, in that it is it has a very rebellious uh, edge to it in the way that it's kind of presented. Um, and it, even though it's kind of designed to be kind of, uh, uh, I guess, more sensual, at least within the lyrics, it has this certain level of innocence to it by the way it sounds to me. It's kind of strange. I guess you could say that there's also kind of that irony to it as well. It's just kind of, one where you could just kind of dance a little, and it has this very kind of upbeat nature to it that, again, I don't think really ultimately takes itself too seriously, um, which again I think was a large part of what David Bowie was um, at least sometimes trying to convey with his music. So uh, here I just felt like the way in which it's overall presented and orchestrated uh, really um, represents again something that's fairly unique to a lot of his other works, and one that I like listening and hearing on the radio. So a good amount um, of edge, and also a certain level of fun and carefreeness as well. So Rebel Rebel succeeds in what it ultimately is trying to present. Um, Moving on to the third song, being Heroes. Now, I think I briefly mentioned the song in another video a while back, but when I was looking through a lot of the David Bowie songs, I mean, this one did really kind of stick out a sore thumb to as out out to me, um, like a sore thumb, only because again, it's not like a lot of his other works that are a little bit more upbeat, or again have this very kind of strange vibe to them. This one is kind of um, more serious and grounded. Uh, and basically, within the song, he discusses two kind of Berlin lovers, and this was supposedly during the time when, again, Berlin had the wall, and it's supposed to be like that. It's sort of impossible for them to be together, since they're sort of divided by the wall. But again, it sort of tries to convey the idea of, if we can be heroes for just one day, if we could just uh, be together, um, then that's kind of what uh, resembles, I guess, a certain amount of adversity by overcoming certain obstacles. So, and hence the lovers are sort of given that title of heroism. Um, and the interesting thing is that this actually, when you actually look as to what the song was supposedly inspired by, apparently it was David Bowie's producer and a woman that he fell in love with while they were in Berlin. So even though the song is sort of has a fictional premise, it's somewhat grounded into again reality from David Bowie's personal experience. So his producer relationship with this Berlin girl sort of gave rise to this particular song. So it's kind of interesting to see the historical context behind these kinds of songs, and it's nice to see that he kind of took something that he experienced or, you know, uh, sort of had around with him within life and sort of kind of convey that within a fictional premise, but at the same time, have the heart and the, I guess again, the impact at least expressed that was at least a part of again David Bowie's life. So it's nice to see it done here. So an interesting work to say the least. And lastly, the final song that I wanted to briefly mention is Changes. This one is one that is fairly enjoyable because, um, again, it has this sort of unique uh, way in which it again sort of utilizes the instrumentals and um, also in doing so addressing the subject matter of changes and time. And I think the song's just very identifiable. I mean, it really gets down to the core um, of the various kinds of um, emotional as well as um, the sort of reality that exists within life, and that being said, involving changes and as well as time. And you sort of see an interesting blend of tones to where, it kind of has an upbeat uh, section to it, and then it kind of takes a little bit of a detour and is a little bit more serious at times. So again, has a variety of interesting instrumentals that sort of work off each other, I think, fairly well. Um, and when you and when talking about specifically more of in the context of again what the song's about, it's not again really clear, plain and white, black and white, but when he sort of addresses changes in time, he sort of says, "Time may change me, but I can't trace time." In other words, I can't, um, you know, time changes me before I can even, kind of figure out where the time went, so to speak. And I think that's something that's very true to life. I mean, we go about living our days, and then we suddenly realize we're at a certain point within our life, and we sort of have this realization of, wow, like so much has changed, and there's, it's kind of like this epiphany, so to speak. And I think David Bowie was trying to kind of express that kind of epiphany of, wow, time may change me, but I can't tell where the time goes, or where life will take me. It's just kind of like it's all up in the air because ultimately, even though I have no control over maybe certain aspects, I can sort of reflect onto what has happened and what has led me up to this particular point within time. So again, I think that is just something that's again very identifiable and something that I think a lot of people can sort of get behind, and I really enjoyed it for that reason. But those are all of the songs that I wanted to address. I'll be sure to put links below so that you may all enjoy these songs if you may choose so. I'd be more than happy to hear if there's anybody else who has their personal favorites of David Bowie, and if you've liked any of his music, feel free to let me know. I'd be more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say for this video. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all next video. Take care. Bye.